Here we go. Good, good, good. All right, let's get a little fun going on here. A little bit of music happening. All right, very good, very good. Now, with that said, let's go ahead and talk about a topic that you guys should know about. There are certain types of individuals who essentially are more likely than not going to face a situation where they could potentially be arrested. Now, I took these examples directly from the Social Security Special Agent Handbook as to what they train the individuals on when going out and looking at particular types of fraud. There's a bunch of them here. We're going to go through each and every type so that you have a full understanding of essentially what things are coming in the not too distant future. Now, you may have noticed Trump's team is very aggressively going after Democrats at this point to, press charges. And to be fair, I don't think OIG is going to be laying down when it comes to finding fraud among Social Security recipients. These are quite literally, and I'm passionate about this because I want you to understand what these are, the major statutes that they use to go ahead and potentially find and arrest individuals related to this. Now, remember, the SSA OIG division is not really about arresting people. However, they hire police specifically for the purpose so that if an arrest needs to be made for that particular area, they can and will do it. Let's go through it real quick. All right, so these are the commonly investigated statutes. Let's go through them. 18 USC Section 2, aiding and abetting. 18 USC Section 201, bribery of a public official. 18 USC Section 208, conflict of interest. 18 USC Section 287, fraudulent claims. 18 USC 371, conspiring to defraud the United States. 18 USC Section 510, forgery. 18 USC Section 641, embezzlement and theft of government property. 18 USC Section 1001, false statements of or entries. 18 USC Section 1028, fraud in connection with identification documents. 18 USC Section 1029, fraud in connection with access devices. 18 USC Section 1030, computer fraud. 18 USC 1341, mail fraud. Then we have 1343, wire fraud. 1344, bank fraud. 42 USC 4, Section 408, Social Security fraud. And 42 USC Section 1383A, supplemental security income fraud. We are going to go through each and every one of these so that you understand exactly what types of crimes they're looking for and the types of individuals who have committed them. Now, many of you are innocent, and that's very good, but some of you are not. And I know this because I get those private consultations all the time where they call me and do that 1 hour, and they're like, hey, heads up, here's an issue. But I also get them for other things too. So the main thing you kind of have to keep in mind with this is that you may find that you are doing something wrong. That's okay. Just work on fixing it if you can. Let's get into it real quick. 18 USC Section 2, aiding and abetting. All right, here are the elements of aiding and abetting. Okay, and remember, I'm going to go through this so that you know what the elements are, and then I'm going to give you some actual examples of what happened in the general, caseloads that are out there of what people actually did. Number one, a substantive offense was committed by someone else. Okay, the defendant, number two, aided, abetted, counseled, and commanded or induced or procured that offense with respect to at least one element of it. Okay, number three, the defendant acted with intent to facilitate the crime. Mere negligence or mistake usually isn't enough. The government must prove the aider or abetter had knowledge and willfulness. Number four, the defendant acted before or during the commission of the crime, not after the fact. So that's going to be your aiding and abetting. Now, a lot of you guys don't really think you fall into the whole situation of aiding and abetting. But I would like you to think about all the other disabled people or retired people who are basically doing something a little bit under the table, or doing something where they're not really that disabled, or doing something yada, yada, yada. And then all of a sudden you are assisting them in some way, or filling out a form for them in some way, or giving a third-party statement in some way. Potentially rises, depending on the fact pattern, to aiding and abetting. Okay, next one. All right, now actually wait, here we've got an actual caseload. Let's go into it real quick. All right, here we go. What happened in that case? All right, so Connecticut, Doherty, Atkins, etc. Or no, it was Kahn. That was the attorney there. They submitted thousands of fraudulent medical documents to the SSA. The documents were intended to show that the claimant qualified for disability when in many cases they did not. The Office of Inspector General caught on. Doherty, the ALJ, so remember it's ALJ Doherty, arranged to award benefits, sometimes without actual hearings, in those cases represented by Kahn. Kahn was the attorney. He was the disability attorney, right? He was the not so good-hearted version of me, okay? Kahn paid Doherty bribes or legal gratuities for this favorable treatment. Because of this scheme, the SSA paid out more than $550 million in lifetime benefits to claimants based on the fraudulent approvals. So in other words, they lost, I mean, it depends on the math and where you go, but like $500 million to a scam between a disability attorney and a disability judge. So, just to be understanding with this, one helped to facilitate the other in the commission of a crime. And that's where the aiding and abetting kind of comes into existence. The next one, number 2, 18 USC section 201, bribery of a public official. I mean, that one had bribery too, but let's keep rocking and rolling. All right, so what are the elements of bribery of a public official? An official act, the fraud on the United States, or the violation of the official's lawful duty. And remember, it criminalizes essentially public officials' acceptance of such bribes, okay? So it makes it a federal crime to directly or indirectly give, offer, or promise anything of value to a public official with intent to influence. The influence part, that's the tricky part. That's the gray room, okay? So who are potential public officials that could be bribed as a result of this? Well, they're federal employees, SSA claims representatives, ALJs, OIG investigators, DDS reps. Any of these types of individuals could be potentially bribed. Now, I say this to you because, to be fair, you're going to be seeing individuals in the not too distant future where they are arrested for these exact things. And that is because, is my belief, that DOJ is going to be working using high-tech AI to basically search through anything and everything they can find online to see who should not be receiving benefits. I think that is in the not too distant future. All right, next one over here. Let's go and keep rocking and rolling. Okay. All right. So there was a case called the United States v. Jose Santiago. That was Texas. An SSA employee accepted payments for approving fraudulent disability claims. They were convicted under this, and it resulted in restitution and also a prison term. There was also United States v. Catherine Cooper. An SSA employee took bribes from claimants in exchange for benefit approvals. They were charged under 201 subsection B2. The result, sentenced to federal prison and barred from federal employment going forward. And it's especially a bad thing when the SSA basically has an employee doing these negative functions, because it's not good. It's not okay. Next one, 18 USC section 208, conflict of interest. A federal employee shall not participate personally and substantially in any particular matter in which they or their spouse, minor child, or certain business partners have a financial interest. So let's break it down. Federal employee, particular matter, specific case, investigation, contract, or decision. Personal or substantial participation, right? They're involved with it somehow. And financial interest, right? Investments, ownerships, compensation, stuff like that. Okay. So what happens in a case like that? Just to give you an idea, basically at the end of the day, they are concerned that an individual will, go ahead and, get some benefit because they had an in with the federal government. And as a result of that in, with some sort of, and let me explain where this really comes in. The SSA does not like it when you have family members that are extended or neighbors, basically go ahead and be adjudicated by the judges who are either related to the person or basically a neighbor of the person or one of those sorts of things. So they expect them, due to a conflict of interest, to withdraw from adjudicating that person. Okay. Next one, 18 USC section 287, fraudulent claims. Okay. Let's go through the breakdown real quick. So there is where the government has to establish, okay, made or presented a false, fictitious, or fraudulent claim to department or agency of the United States, knew the claim was false, fictitious, or fraudulent, and did so with the specific intent to violate the law or with a consciousness of that what they were doing was wrong. Okay, so it's your classic, fraudulent claim. Okay, So, classic one was there was David Lamb. I went through this claim before. Pearland, Texas, 45 years old, former operations supervisor. You got to watch out for those SSA former employees here, and claims specialist at the Social Security Administration office in Houston. Basically, he exploited his access to the SSA records to steal personal identifiable information of deceased men. He would then go ahead and find and create survivors of these deceased men. He'd basically create children, and then he would coordinate with women who had children to go ahead and basically have the checks sent out to those women, and then they would cut him a check off of that. This was fraudulent claims. He was charged under 18 U.S.C. Section 287. This is a no bueno situation because not only was he an SSA employee, he was an operations supervisor and a claims specialist. And he was creating literal individuals and connections there to create benefits that would then pay him. This is an SSA employee who got caught. Next one, 18 U.S.C. Section 371, conspiring to defraud the United States. Let's go through it real quick, okay? And please remember, if you find these videos helpful because they educate you on like how the world works, what's going on with the SSA, what are the issues to watch out for, it is crucial for you to like and subscribe to these videos. Absolutely crucial. Big thank you to Carl Johnson for the $10 donation. That's awesome. Let me put a big heart there. Very, very cool. Let's see. Carl said, my daughter just got a job, and since she was on my bank account to help me when needed, she had her checks deposited into my account. Could this be a problem? Yeah, you always want to have your accounts separate because they might be looking at a resource limitation if you're SSI at 2,000, or an SGA limitation because that's earned income that basically would be cut off at 1620. So if you have earned income coming into your account, $1,620, it would violate element 1 and look like you're the one who's potentially earning it. And as a result, it's just tricky because the SSA gets bank records pretty quickly. And if they see basically, actual work payment, going on, then it's not good. They're going to assume that potentially you are doing this. And when you're doing this, it's not a good thing. And they can check things though against the payment and, what payment, like ADP, how do they link it to the social and stuff like that. But it's not a good look. It may be something where you have to defend it and you could potentially lose some months as a result of it. Let's keep rocking and rolling real quick. 18 U.S.C. Section 371, conspiring to defraud the United States. All right, so here are basically the elements of conspiring to defraud the United States. There has to be an existence of a conspiracy or an agreement. It's got to be two or more people, two or more parties. The agreement can be express or implied. So it doesn't have to be written down. It can be oral, right? The purpose of the agreement is to commit an offense against the United States or defraud the United States or any of its agencies, which, to be fair, we will probably be seeing with Madame Pelosi in the not too distant future because of what happened with the FBI. That is a very, very spicy and interesting situation. I think you guys are going to be seeing some real sparks on that one. Okay, so then you have intent. So the defendant must have willfully, knowingly joined the conspiracy. That means they understood what the point of the conspiracy was, objectively were part of the understanding of it and wanted to go ahead and do it. So mere association, is not normally enough, not incidental involvement. They've got to understand the objective and be a part of that intent to participate. Then they need an overt act in the furtherance of the conspiracy. So at least one conspirator has to commit an overt act. The act does not need to be illegal by itself. It just needs to further the goal, of that potential conspiracy. And kind of the bottom line is that objective is, overall to defraud the United States, commit the offense, etc. And so at the end of the day, you can have a conspiracy. It's just one of those things where, to be fair, and I'm going to be very fair with this thing, you don't actually have to commit the crime to get hit with conspiracy. Conspiracy is like your introductory to the crime. People are on board, people are in agreement, they have an overt act that they're, doing in furtherance of it. Even if they don't get there, even if they don't actually rob the bank, this type of situation still can be charged against them. Now, let's talk about this. There was Eric Lemoyne Willis. I think we covered this case, actually. It's an SSA operations supervisor in Sacramento and Lodi. Willis exploited his position to access confidential SSA records. He targeted beneficiaries, large direct deposit payments, extracting sensitive information such as social security numbers, addresses, and bank account details. Willis then shared this information with Ross and George, who would often sell that information to other people. So again, another SSA operations supervisor doing some pretty shitty stuff. So you got to watch out for those past SSA supervisors, managers, stuff like that. Then you have Darren Dimitri Ross. Darren Dimitri Ross, residing in North Carolina. Ross used the stolen PII to impersonate beneficiaries. He contacted various SSA field offices across the country, convincing representatives to change direct deposit information to bank accounts he actually controlled. He opened at least 44 fraudulent online bank accounts and basically transferred a portion of the illicit proceeds over to Willis. And there was Joshua Bilo George, employed as a Federal Protective Service officer in San Diego. He basically had a scheme where he stole personal information and impersonated beneficiaries to go ahead and get money to his accounts. So to be fair, this one is pretty darn common. Next one. 18 USC section 510 forgery. All right, so what are the elements you need to know about forgery? So forging endorsements, that's a defendant falsely made or forged an endorsement or signature. The signature was on a treasury check bond or some other, US based, note. The defendant acted with intent to defraud and the instrument was genuine. So it's got to be like a real US thing, a real US note, okay? Can't be counterfeit. Next one is basically uttering or publishing forged instruments, which some of you don't realize this can happen quite a bit. So, for example, somebody might steal what the checks look like or what's going on with the checks or something like that. And they might try to create, a forged instrument. They might try to, change some signatures, whatever. And when they do this and they pass it, as they call it, they're basically in 18 USC 510 forgery land, specifically subsection A2. So you don't want to do this. This is not a good idea. This is where the defendant passed, uttered, or published a treasury check, bond, or security. The instrument contained a forged endorsement or signature. The defendant knew the endorsement or signature was forged, and the defendant acted with intent to defraud. You don't want to do that. There's also, and I think this is one that's going to be more common or was quite common during Biden's era because of essentially what was happening with all the immigrants coming in, both legal and illegal. You had 18 USC section 510 subsection B, trafficking in forged instruments. This became a thing of ways to go ahead and create fraud to get more money quickly. All right, so in order to go ahead and prove that, basically you have to go ahead and the defendant must buy, sell, exchange, receive, deliver, retain, or conceal a treasury check, bond, or other security. The defendant knew it bore a falsely made or forged endorsement or signature, and the defendant acted with intent to defraud. So this is something you've really, really got to go ahead and be careful with because it's just, it's one of those rampant things they will get you because they're going to catch on. You might get away with it once, twice, 5 times, 10 times, but they'll ultimately catch on. Then there is 18 USC attempt. This is an interesting one. I want to do a subsection on this real quick. Attempting to commit any of the above acts, forgery, uttering, or trafficking, is punishable as if the act had been completed. And so basically, they just get you on attempt. This means basically the defendant intended to commit the offense and took a substantial step towards its commission. So you don't even have to commit the crime. You just have to be rolling in the direction of it, and you'll get an attempt charge, 18 USC section 510C. Okay. Let me give you an example of this. We have an example case. There were 2 East Bay residents indicted for cashing stolen U.S. Treasury checks. This happened in 2025, so very, very recent. In February 2025, Francesca Calagua or whatever, a part-time associate banker at JP Morgan Chase Bank, and Dondre Gray were indicted for conspiracy to commit bank fraud and do bank fraud. Calagua was also charged with 5 counts of receipt of U.S. Treasury checks with forged endorsements or signatures under 18 U.S.C. Section 510B. Between May of 2022 and March 2023, they conspired to obtain stolen U.S. Treasury checks, recruited others to fraudulently endorse or sign the checks, and cash them for personal gain. The scheme involved at least 339 stolen checks totaling over $850,000. The investigation was a collaborative effort involving SSA, OIG, and other federal agencies. So, I mean, one of the things you have to keep in mind, like they caught him, but it involved almost $1 billion worth. Almost $1 million worth of treasury checks. I mean, when you think about that, having to do treasury checks that total around $850,000, you better be moving and grooving those checks. Next one, 18 USC section 641, embezzlement and theft of government property. Let's go through it real quick. All right, so the government property, here are the elements. The item involved must be property of the United States. Any agency, any department, any part of it includes, it could be records, money, it could be vouchers, could be things of value, could be things of not much value, whatever. The defendant must then have embezzled, stolen, purloined, or knowingly converted the property for their own use or someone else's use. So basically, they're taking it, they're snookering it, they're converting it. Alternatively, receiving, concealing, or retaining such property, knowing it was stolen, also satisfies the element. So if you basically take something and conceal it, nobody can find it, and then they do find and they found out you were the one that hid it, they got you on this. The defendant has to have knowledge that the property belongs to the United States. They got to understand that. They have to know that. And then also the value threshold for many of these penalties. Property value exceeds $1,000. Penalties are more severe, up to 10 years in prison if they exceed more than $1,000. If the value is $1,000 or less, usually up to 1 year in prison. But I mean, it could literally be like a $5 item. Okay. Let's talk about somebody who broke this law. There was an SSA employee, former SSA employee, Harlingen, Texas, 2023. Former SSA claims specialist was indicted for creating fictitious profiles for 2 non-existent children linked to a deceased man and woman living in Mexico. He processed survivor benefits applications for these fabricated children and withdrew funds using debit cards issued in the names. Each fictitious child received $1,400 economic stimulus payments. The individual faced charges of theft of government property and aggravated identity theft. OIG caught him. Okay. There's a couple others that did this, but let's keep rocking and rolling. Next one, 18 USC section 1001, false statements or entries. A statement, representation, or document. Okay, false statements or entries. So what we're talking about is there's a statement. You make some sort of representation. You put something down. There's a document, whatever. Now this document happens. The statement or the document or the entry to be false, fictitious, or fraudulent. Okay, so remember we're talking about false statements, false entries. Okay, then after that, it has to be material. And this is kind of the important part. A lot of you don't know what material is, but it has to be the natural tendency to influence or is capable of influencing the decision of the agency or department involved to do something, to act on something, to make something happen. Then you have to have, the defendant has to have knowledge, must know the statement or entry was false or made it recklessly with disregard for the truth. Okay. So, that'll get you. And then of course, jurisdiction must be within the jurisdiction of the federal government agency or department when this is going on. Now, here's one. Stephen G. Ackerman, Colorado, 2017, agreed to a $200,000 settlement after allegations that he falsely reported his work activity to the SSA between 2011 and 2016. Ackerman operated a marijuana retail business and failed to disclose his substantial gainful activity, making him ineligible for Social Security disability income payments. The Office of Inspector did catch him. So, and I'm going to be honest with you, some of you think this is totally ridiculous, totally out there that somebody would do a marijuana retail business on the side. Let me explain to you, there are a lot of claimants. There are a surprising amount of claimants who are growing and selling marijuana on the side while receiving disability benefits. So if you're like, oh, this doesn't apply to me, let me explain. There are going to be people who watch this video and go, oh shit, that's me. There's literally people that will be watching this video going, oh shit, that's me. Okay. Another one, Catherine Prosper, Maine. You don't see a lot of stuff in Maine, but I will say this, Maine is having some issues with some cultural issues and also some unfortunate drug-related issues right now. In fact, large parts of Maine are having massive drug issues, specifically being brought in from places like China and stuff like that. So kind of the bottom line here is you don't normally see a lot of problems with Maine, but Maine, since basically 2016 forward, has become a haven for unfortunate crime. So in 2021, Catherine Prosper was sentenced to 4 years of probation in order to pay $89,864 in restitution for Social Security fraud and making false statements. She continued to receive benefits after her mother's death and failed to report her employment status to the SSA. They got her. Then there was another one, Missouri, Mundane. 2023, Mundane pled guilty to $209,000 disability benefit fraud. She falsely claimed that her incarcerated sons were performing most of the work for her childcare business, thereby minimizing her earnings and continuing to receive disability benefits. Office of the Inspector General ultimately caught her. Let me point something out to you. A lot of you need extra money right now. A lot of you need extra. There's no way around that. A lot of you need extra money right now because, let's just be honest. Bidenomics was a failed everything. It's just like there's no part of it that was good. There's just no part of it that was good. So as a result of you could try, the Medicare, you could make but that's not his economics, that's not like the actual financial going to the grocery store, being able to buy a car, stuff like that. So at the end of the day, just to be very straightforward, right? This is a situation where a lot of people, a lot of people want to start a little business, right? They want to become a TikToker. They want to go ahead and start making widgets that they sell on Etsy, stuff like that. But then a lot of people, when they grow the business, all of a sudden they're bringing in enough money where they got to hire somebody else. And they're starting to pay that other person more so that they don't have to pay themselves as much. But that other person then gives them some of the money that they paid them. That's the gig that normally gets built. That's normally how the crime actually gets built up. If this other person is in cahoots with you, look, they might not catch it right in the beginning. If it's small enough, they might not ever catch it. But if they do, it ain't good. It ain't good because you're going to get hit with this federal statute, and this is not a good thing. Although some people claim statute is a word only used by states, but I use it for Fed. Next one, former SSA employee, 1.8 million theft. In 2024, a former SSA employee was indicted for stealing 1.8 million in Social Security funds. She used her position to create false benefit claims using Social Security numbers of deceased individuals and directed fraudulent payments to herself. The Office of Inspector General caught her. Another one, basically, just give you a final one. 2014, the SSA OIG initiated Operation Walking Dead, charging 18 individuals who collectively stole over 1 million, when 1 million in federal benefits by continuing to claim payments for deceased beneficiaries. For instance, Elena McAfee fraudulently received $103,411 in benefits intended for her deceased mother. Now, I can almost promise you that somebody will end up watching this video who is currently receiving the retirement benefits of their deceased parent. I can almost promise you. I think one of the things you just have to keep in mind with this is that please understand at some point they figure it out. And then at that point, if you don't magically have a way to say that they died later in life, they are going to come get you. That's just the reality. They're going to come and arrest you. Okay. Next thing, please remember, if you are receiving Medicare, if you're about to receive Medicare and you want to get a tune-up on it or just have them basically give you some direction, go ahead and give these guys a call. They're brokers. They do the whole Medicare Advantage stuff. Give them a shot to do a tune-up on your Medicare. It is 339-226-6287. Again, 339-226-6287. AskChapter.org/disability. Chapter is the biggie. It's the super biggie. They have access to more potential plans and programs than anybody else. They are all over the nation. So it's a really, really good thing. They save the average person around $1,100. Next one, 18 U.S.C. Section 1028, fraud in connection with identification documents. Here we go. Now, element one, knowingly, the defendant had to act intentionally and was aware of the fraudulent nature of their actions. Number two, fraudulent conduct involving identification documents. So what do we mean by that? There was a using of false ID, commit fraud, deception, they show up, flash a badge, whatever. Producing a false identification document, like, oh yeah, here I am, or here's the person, here's the, let me through the door. Possessing with intent to use a transfer a false ID, transferring or selling a false ID or counterfeit authentication features or altering IDs. You know what I mean? That's really like take retired off your card, like, and meet the parents or meet the fuckers or whatever it was. So with that said, you have the next element relating to identification documents. The document must be a means of identification or of another person or issued by a government authority. Could be a driver's license, social security card, passport, immigration document, resident document. Intent to commit a violation or defraud, right? So you intend to commit unlawful activity. And then interstate or federal nexus. Some prosecutions require the ID to cross state lines or be under federal jurisdiction. Again, that is 18 U.S.C. Section 1028 for fraud in connection with identification documents. Okay. This happens quite a bit because people want to get access to information, and those documents are a great way to do it. Here's an example case. There was a synthetic identity fraud scheme in San Antonio, Texas. In a significant case, individuals used approximately 700 synthetic identities, combining stolen social security numbers with fabricated names and dates of birth to open bank accounts and shell companies. Now, remember, we had a big issue with a lot of immigrants buying. Again, I'm not talking about when this happened, but I mean, you can guess, buying social security numbers that made it onto the web. And, social security numbers, you could buy literally them. You could spend $5 and buy somebody's social security number, $3. I think it was one of the lower ones. These entities were then used to fraudulently apply for Paycheck Protection Program loans under the CARES Act, resulting in the disbursement of $20 to $25 million in relief bonds, or relief funds, rather. The scheme exploited the social security number as a key element in creating false identities to access government benefits. Bottom line is, there's people that buy your social security numbers. Your social security numbers have made it onto the dark web many times. A lot of people have a file of tons and tons of social security numbers. It wasn't that hard to grab the last one. You just go onto the dark web, and basically it was sitting there. That's because a hacker hacked a company that scans everybody's faces, so the government can go ahead and identify all of the images online and link them to your profile. If a lot of you don't know, the government has a secret profile for everybody that has anything that might link to you in that profile, because anybody could potentially become a threat to the United States. So as a result of that, they had a company that would mass scan, facial recognition images, and then pull all those images and assign them and stuff like that to those special magical profiles. And when they did that, that group who had access to social security numbers and stuff like that basically got hacked. And when that group got hacked, the hacker tried to sell it. Then another hacker stole it from that hacker and posted it to the worldwide dark web. When they did that, you could just download, like, it was millions and millions and millions of social security numbers. You could just download it. It was like no big deal. It was a huge deal, but it was right there. Pale Rider 747, thank you for the $2 donation. I super appreciate that. King Scott Block by Queen. I'm not really sure. What does that mean? Help me out. King Scott Block by King. I'm not sure what that means. Somebody give me some explanation on what that means. Let me put the heart next to it. Okay, Jarhead Ed said, Walter, what is the name of the company that wipes out your info on the internet? There's a couple. Okay, so here's the deal. I've been testing them. I didn't figure out which one to go with yet. Cloaked isn't bad, but they're a little bit pricier. So that's kind of the problem I've been running into, trying to find one that's just cheap and easy for people to use. It's got to be repetitive because they don't get everything the first time and they have to keep doing it. So Cloaked is good. That's the one I was looking at, but the problem is the price is a little bit higher. So at the end of the day, I'm a little worried that people won't be able to pay the monthly fee with it. So that's kind of the issue here. Okay. Let's see. All right. Now, let me give you another example of this one. A former SSA employee's fraudulent claims in Puerto Rico. Mirna Faria, a former Social Security employee, was indicted for submitting false claims for deceased individuals, directing the resulting benefits to her own accounts. She used social security numbers of individuals she believed to be deceased. That's the tricky part. Who's actually dead? That's the tricky part. To fabricate retirement survivor claims, embezzling approximately $1.8 million over 12 years. Her actions involved the misuse of social security numbers, fraudulent documentation to perpetrate the scheme. I remember going through this claim. This lady was not a low-level person at the SSA. This was like a manager. This was a SSA manager of an important section of the SSA. This is a manager of a major thing at the SSA. And she was basically able to go ahead and just figure out who potentially had passed, and then, figure out a way to, fabricate benefits to her and survivors claims and all that stuff. 1.8 million to her over 12 years. I got to be honest, there's easier ways to make money. There's just easier ways than doing this fraud. There are easier ways. It may not make as much money over a 12-year period, but I mean, there's just easier ways. Get into finance. You go into finance, you're going to get those numbers. You're going to hit those numbers. Let me give you something. If I ever became physically disabled, the number one thing I would be doing is learning finance, passing the test, doing all I needed to do. The number one thing The number one thing I would be doing is I'd be going into finance and learning as much as I could, because 1.8 million over 12 years, that ain't for finance people. That ain't, they do way better than that. Way better. Next one, another case, impersonating an identity theft in Connecticut. In 2021, an employee at a Connecticut car dealership was sentenced to 21 months in prison for falsifying auto loan applications using SSI benefit verification letters, and in some cases, the identities of others without authorization. This case involved the fraudulent use of Social Security numbers and related documents to secure loans under false pretenses. So, a little bit spicy. Next one, 18 USC section 1029, fraud in connection with access devices. So like, getting into computers, stuff like that. All right, so let's go through this real quick. There's the unauthorized use of it or the possession of it. You're using it, a clickety click, and the possession of it is an option. It's the or option where you got it in your hand or somewhere in your house. The defendant knowingly used, produced, trafficked in, or possessed an access device without authorization. So that could be anything. It could be a special access USB card. It could be a special pen, like from the Star Wars universe, anything like that. Access device includes credit cards, debit cards, account numbers, PINs, or any other means of accessing financial accounts. So you got to have unauthorized use of it or possession of it. And then number two, you got to intent to defraud. Okay, with intent to defraud or obtain anything of value from it. This is a key mental element. Mere possession is not enough. There must be an intent to deceive or steal. So to be clear, you got to have it if you just possess it, but then you got to somewhere down the line, you got to you got to basically have that intent that you're going to steal using it or deceive somebody using it. Okay, next element. Financial loss or value. The unauthorized use resulted in or could have resulted in financial loss to another person or entity. There's no minimum dollar amount pertaining to this, but higher value fraud obviously increases the penalties and the time you're going to spend in prison. And the final element, interstate or international nexus. The offense involved interstate or foreign commerce because it's a federal crime. For example, using a stolen credit card online or across state lines triggers federal jurisdiction. A lot of people don't realize that. But when you use a credit card that you stole online at some store not in your state, that ain't a state thing. That's a Fed thing. That's a Fed. Okay. Let me give you some examples real quick. Michelle Marone, fraudulent access to Social Security benefits. In November 2021, Michelle Marone of Middleton, New Hampshire, right? So it's very important, pled guilty to access device fraud after her boyfriend, a Social Security disability insurance recipient, went missing. Marone fraudulently obtained a replacement debit card using his personal information. She withdrew approximately $23,591.50 from ATMs over the next year, continuing to access the SSDI funds, despite the SSA being unaware of his disappearance. Where did he go? Who knows? But she liked the money, so she took the money. Case example number 2, Gino Rives, elder and disability fraud. In June 2024, Gino Rives of St. Louis County, Missouri, was sentenced to 87 months in prison. In order to pay over $1.1 million in restitution, he had fraudulently received supplemental security income benefits by concealing his employment and assets. Additionally, Rives exploited 2 elderly women, obtaining vehicles and checks totaling more than $855,000 and using their debit cards and personal purchases. He also transferred property titles and moved one victim into a nursing home. And I've seen people do this stuff, and it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. But basically, people get older, they get elderly, and then you have some really terrible people out there that will just steal stuff from them. It's not a good thing. It's a horrible, horrible thing. It's people taking advantage of people. You see this in the disability field. You see this in the retirement field all the time. It is incredibly unfortunate. Okay. Next one, Carlos Deshawn Brown, credit card fraud scheme, September 2022. Carlos Deshawn Brown of Cleveland Heights, Ohio, was sentenced to 38 months in prison in order to pay $177,716.07 in restitution. Between 2014 and 2019, Brown used the personal identification information of multiple victims, many of whom were elderly or mentally impaired, to perpetrate a credit card fraud scheme. He made unauthorized purchases, depleting the victim's savings. OIG caught him. Here's the deal. I see this a lot with Social Security disability recipients who have a drug dealer who basically, gets them using and abusing drugs, and then they owe the drug dealer, and the drug dealer keeps coming back, and yada, yada. I think what a lot of people don't realize is how dangerous drug dealers actually are. They start using them because they think they're going to be cool, and then they realize they end up owing this person who has no moral boundaries, especially with the younger generation. They have no moral boundaries. You are not their client. You are not their customer. They're just getting you hooked to abuse you in the future. There is no moral code there anymore with the younger generation of those terrible, terrible, horrible people. In the Granite 617, thank you for the $5 donation. That's absolutely amazing. I got $5 on your grind. West Quincy 617, Massachusetts. Yes, that's so true. Massachusetts is so, New Jersey and Massachusetts and their taxes are out of control. Please, if you live in a blue state, find a way to vote for anything that will reduce your taxes, because you ain't going to be able to live there for long if they keep doing massive taxation. New Jersey is the worst. New Jersey, it does not make sense. It does not make sense. I don't know how these people get away with doing this stuff. It just does not make sense. Oh, it looks like I missed a light. Hold on. I missed a light over here. I missed a light. Let me get this thing on. Hold on. Let me snooker this thing. Oh, there we go. And we are back. There we go. Now I got some light on me. All right. So it's amazing. That is a super bright light. Even with that thing on, it's amazing how little that thing brightens up the rest of it. It's just hardly any light compared. Like there's this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 7 lights on me right now, full blare, and I'm only this bright. Like just think about that. I got 7 lights, full blare. I'm only this. All right, here we go. Next one. All right, so we got through that. Let's go over to the next one real quick. 18 USC section 1030, computer fraud. All right, computer frauds. Remember, we're talking about a box, digital monsters in there. We're going to go capture some monsters. Here we go. Unauthorized access or exceeding authorized access. That means like you're going into areas you're not supposed to, or that you don't have access to on purpose because you don't have administrative codes, whatever. The defendant intentionally accessed a computer without authorization or exceeded authorized access. Exceeds authorized access means using a computer in way beyond the permission granted by the owner. So if you are accessing like higher level stuff and you're not supposed to be in there, element 1 is met. Protected computer. The access involved a protected computer, which means, a computer used in affecting interstate or foreign commerce or communication. This generally covers pretty much any computer interacting with the internet. That's if it connects to the internet, boom, element met. Next one, intent or resulting harm. Depending on the subsection, the defendant must either 1, obtain information, like they snooker stuff off of the computer, 2, commit fraud, obtain something of value with intent to defraud, or cause damage. So like, for example, you could delete stuff, you could modify stuff, you could destroy data, you could, create errors and, basically end something. You could even do physical harm to, some of the, physical, pieces of the internals of the computer. You could alter things, software, the actual hardware that's going with it. You could put, viruses in it. You could put malware in it, stuff like that. Element 4, and threaten harm, transmitted code or commands that cause or could damage to another's computer or system. Okay. So that's kind of the final thing with this. Now, just understanding that, just to be clear, each one of these gets its own thing, basically exceeding authorized access without authorization, committing fraud within it, intentionally causing damage, trafficking in passwords, computer access information, committing fraud or damage to the computer. These will all put you in a situation, especially if it's an internet computer, because then it's like, then you got your interstate commerce gig. Thank you, Cyber Katie. Thank you. Member, priority response for 5 months. I super appreciate that. Since priority response, you ever have a question, go ahead and reach out. That's awesome. Very, very cool. Very, very cool. She said, thank you, Walter. Hello, everyone. Stay safe out there, which is awesome. Very, very cool. Now, the next one is 18 USC section 1341, mail fraud. Okay, so you obviously know what this is. We're talking USPS land. Existence of a scheme to defraud. That's number 1. Intent to defraud, right? Willfully with intent to defraud. Use of the mail, used or caused to be used, the U.S. Postal Service or a private mail carrier. The mailing can be for any purpose related to the scheme, including sending or receiving material solicitations or payments. That's why you don't get as many solicitations through the mail as you used to back in the day, because they started to crack down on this, because people used to get like fraudulent stuff all the time. Just scratch off this thing here or call this number here. There used to be fraud stuff. Oh, you go back to like the 1990s, fraud stuff in the mail all the time. Materiality, the misrepresentation or omission must be material, must have a natural tendency to influence or be capable of influencing the victim's decision. And then, of course, there must be a federal nexus to make it a federal crime, interstate, federal channels of communication, stuff like that. I'm going to give you some examples of this. There was Afshin Satuda, theft of deceased mother's SSDI benefits. There was Linda Nguyen, disability fraud scheme. I did a whole claim on that, like a whole video on that. Former post employee sentence for identity theft scheme, which was a big one. I'm rolling now. I'm going to get through the rest of these. Then we have 18 USC section 1343, wire fraud. 1, scheme to defraud, intent to defraud, use of interstate wire communication in connection to a scheme. Here's one from 2025 that just popped out. Tiffany Foster, fraudulent pandemic benefit claims. That was part of that whole wire fraud thing. In July 2025, Tiffany Foster, 48-year-old Kansas City resident and SSA employee. And the funny thing is, I remember when I started making these videos and people were like, there's no way there's that many criminals that are SSA employees. There's no way that there are that many Social Security employees that are committing crimes. You would be surprised. You would be very surprised. Indeed, indeed. Indeed. Okay, so with that said, I just saw a thing from Zena. Zena said, Walter, you are bright enough. You don't need that bright light. We have control over how your brightness on our end. Oh, that's true. That's true. But the thing is, if I shut like 2 of these off, then it's like it doesn't cover the whole area. It's frustrating. Let me tell you, lighting, like if you ever want to go ahead and like make something look good, you have to overlight it and then step the camera down so that it basically makes it so that the camera has to do less work with the film or basically the sensor, the little color, the little box inside of it actually collects light. So, but I actually overlight myself too, because one of the things you can't really see is that my eyes, when I'm overlit like this, you can't see how bad the lack of sleep is on these pups because my skin is super overlit. So a lot of the detail kind of gets sucked out for my sheen. Got a nice little Charlie Sheen going on my face because pretty much I've been working outside over the past couple of hours before I started going live tonight. And that sun, I don't know, something about my Scottish skin, it just, it's like a defense mechanism. It gets a nice little sheen of sweat and oil. It's like, oh, the sun, let me oil myself. So yeah, if you're cool like that, you might be cool like that. Maybe not. I don't know. Anyways, Tiffany Foster, July 2025. Tiffany Foster, 48-year-old, basically, she submitted altered tax and bank documents to receive both Paycheck Protection Program, loan, and unemployed benefits totaling over $50,000. The indictment alleges that she used wire communications to submit these fraudulent applications, meeting the criteria for wire fraud. Y'all going to be seeing some. I'm not saying a word, but y'all going to be seeing some congressmen and women unfortunately getting charged with wire fraud because there were some bad apples during that whole, and I'm not saying during which presidency, but there were some bad apples rolling around. Just saying. Christopher Markin, fraudulent telework and leave schemes. Oh, remember this one? We did a whole video on this one. In September of 2024, Christopher Markin, a 40-year-old former SSA employee from Westfield, Indiana, was sentenced to 2 years of probation in order to pay $49,255 in restitution after pleading guilty to wire fraud between February 2019 and June 2022. Markham falsely reported teleworking full-time for SSA while actually working as a home inspector. He used wire communications to submit fraudulent telework and leave requests, diverting his federal salary to his personal business. Here was the weird thing. I think it was his mom and his wife were the ones responding to SSA requests while he was working as basically an individual that was checking homes, being a home inspector. His wife and mom should have just got a job at the SSA and he could have done his home inspection gig. I don't know why he had to use them. It's they could have got a job themselves doing it. It's just ridiculous. You had 3 people working there. Just blows my mind. All right. Anyways, next one. Justin Skiff. I remember this one. Fraudulent survivors benefit scheme. In March of 2023, Justin Skiff, a 36-year-old former SSA claims specialist from Castle Pines, Colorado, seems like there's a lot of bad apples, if you know what I mean. A lot of bad SSA apples. I'm just saying. Pled guilty to wire fraud, Social Security fraud, and money laundering from August 2019 to September 2021. Skiff used his position to create fictitious records for deceased individuals and their children, directing over $324,000 in survivors' benefits to himself. He utilized wire communications to establish and manage these fraudulent records, facilitating the wire fraud scheme. We're going to skip a couple more of these because I want to get through this, and we've already been live for, I'm not even sure, it looks like 49 minutes. I'm trying to not hit an hour here because, to be honest, it's a lot. These are the specific things the SSA OIG agents are trained on to go ahead and arrest people, and you're going to be seeing some people, lots of people being arrested for these in the future, so just be aware this is what they're trained on. Like, these are the alphabet soup, statutes, the particular items that they're going to be looking at, okay? 18 USC section 1344, bank fraud. You need existence of a financial institution, loan association, credit union, federally insured bank, savings group, whatever. You need a scheme to defraud. You need intent to deprive, knowingly and with intent to defraud, to obtain money or property of the financial institution or to cause it to lose money or property. And then you need to have execution of the scheme. You have to put it into action. Even if you suck at it and it never actually happens, that's okay. You're still going to get charged with that crime. So this is a no bueno situation. Okay. Here's an example of that. 2025 California, what a surprise. United States v. Francesca. Okay. We already went over that one. United States v. Michael Thomas. That was Florida, 2023. Michael Thomas was sentenced to 10 years in prison for his role in bank fraud scheme involving the fraudulent endorsement of cashing of Social Security benefit checks. Thomas used stolen identities to create counterfeit checks, which were then deposited into accounts he controlled. The SSA OIG, in collaboration with the FBI and local law enforcement, investigated the case, leading to Thomas's conviction. The funny thing is, I actually know Michael Thomas, who lived in the southern district. I'm going to have to look him up. I might actually know this person. I might know that Michael Thomas. I don't know. I'll have to check. I might know that Michael Thomas. Man, I might know that guy. I might know. I mean, I haven't talked to him like, I don't know, 8 or 9 years, but I might know that guy. 42 USC section 408, Social Security fraud. Now we're getting to actual definitive Social Security fraud. Material misrepresentation or concealment. Okay, we got to get this one straight because this one's a home runner, a hitter, if you will, when it comes to things these OIG agents are going to be looking for to go ahead and, pick up some data on. The defendant knowingly made a false statement, concealed information, or misrepresented the fact. This includes false statements on application forms, applications in general, or Social Security officials. So I had a case where a young individual basically lied on some Social Security forms. I didn't catch it because I just assumed she was not lying to me. And at the end of it, the judge gave her a formal verbal reprimand. It did not, to my knowledge, I withdrew because I didn't, when a claimant lies to me that much, like I just, I don't, it's not winning to me. It's just, they're BSing me beyond the normal amount. All the clients always BS me, but this was beyond the normal amount. This was not an acceptable amount. So as a result, anyways, let's keep reading. So you have material misrepresentation or concealment. You're hiding it. Knowledge and intent. You knew about it. It was up here and you intended to move it forward, right? Act willfully, knowingly, right? Deceive the Social Security Administration. Connection to Social Security program. The misrepresentation or concealment relates to the Social Security Act or SSA programs. So it could have been about retirement benefits, survivors benefits, supplemental security income, disability benefits. And then materiality, right? So basically false statement or omission. So it's where you say something or you omit to say, you don't say something, must be material, and material is defined as potential to influence the SSA's decisions regarding eligibility or the amount of benefits, okay? And then as a result, there must be sometimes, not always, a resulting benefit. Sometimes obtained or attempted to obtain a benefit, trying to get some money out of the gig, do something. It doesn't always require the benefit, the money to come to you. Sometimes it doesn't require that, but sometimes they do have that. Let me give you another one. Okay, this was terrorism related to Social Security number misuse post 9/11. Following the September 11 attacks, the SSA OIG collaborated with federal agencies to address the misuse of Social Security numbers by individuals linked to terrorism. For instance, Malek Saif, a licensed pilot from Djibouti, was arrested for obtaining multiple social security numbers using fraudulent immigration documents. He pled guilty to multiple counts, including misuse of social security number in federal court in Phoenix. Similarly, Sofiane Lamashi, another individual associated with the hijackers, was smuggled into the U.S., purchased a new identity, was convicted of multiple counts, including misuse of a social security number. That was back in the day where people basically did terrorist attacks against the United States. Of course, they happen all the time nowadays. It's just, when, it's, I'm not getting into the politics of that, but you know the problems, you know what's going on. In the Granite 617, thank you for the $2 donation. I super appreciate it. Mass raised to many Fugazis. Fugaz. Oh, yeah. I gotcha. Try to be you. Yeah. Okay. Maine, California, New York, worse. Yeah, for sure. I get what you're saying. $2 donation again. With 50 letters. Yeah. But I understand what you're saying. I gotcha. It took me a little bit that I was like, oh man, this is like a cute quasi code. We're getting it. But I get what you're saying. Thank you for the donations, though. That is awesome. That is very awesome. I'm trying to figure out what your little looks like a game, vintage game. God, that looks like those games. Remember that? I forget what it's called. I think Nintendo made it. It was like these goggles you put up. It's like virtue game, whatever. It's like these goggles you put up there. That's what your little logo thing looks like. It reminds me of. I used to play that thing. All right, another. Now, just to be clear, a big one that's not part of my list is where there were lots of basically police officers, firefighters, those types of individuals who got hit with Social Security fraud because they weren't actually disabled under the rules and regulations of the 9/11 SSA interaction. Like they were out there jet skiing, having fun, partying, going on boats, stuff like that. Here's the thing: the SSA is not devoid of understanding a very important fact, which is, just to be fair here, a very important fact. Okay, the important fact is this: when somebody gets a pension and another pension and a Social Security benefit, or a compensation and a Social Security benefit, or a pension and a Social Security benefit, the likelihood for them to go and do fun stuff is higher. So those are usually easier ones to catch doing fun stuff. Just let that sink in for a moment. Another one, misuse of represented payees. The SSA OIG has also investigated cases where individuals represented payees misuse benefits intended for beneficiaries. In one audit, the SSA OIG identified over 1,500 instances of benefit misuse by individual payees, amounted to approximately 7.6 million. However, only about 31% of these cases were referred to the SSA OIG for further investigation, highlighting the need for improved oversight and referral process. Next one, 42 U.S.C. Section 1383A. Supplemental security income fraud. Let's go through this one real quick. Okay. False statement, misrepresentation, or concealment. The defendant knowingly made a false statement, omitted information, or misrepresented a fact. Okay. Okay. So I actually had one of these. Where they did this. And then, see, here's the problem too. Some of you guys don't realize, like, those forms that you fill out are federal statements for the rest of time. Like if the cosmos were to magically, poof, and then disappear, then it would end. But otherwise, for the rest of time, that's going to exist on some server somewhere forever. Okay. So anyways, supplemental security income fraud, 42 U.S.C. Section 1883A, false statement, misrepresentation, or concealment of a fact, knowledge, and willfulness, where you act, meaning that you understand what's going on. You're basically trying to see the SSA and you're going to act on it. You're going to do the thing about it. Then basically it's got to be material, so essentially it will influence the SSA's decisions, actions, momentum, payments, whatever. And then there has to be a connection to the SSI program. Obviously you got to be applying for or fighting an overpayment on it or whatever. And then it has to result in you trying to get a benefit, you trying to get some sort of SSI increase, modification, relief from it, over whatever. Let me give you an example. One Georgia woman arraigned for Social Security fraud in February 2014. Kathy Thomas was arraigned for Social Security fraud after it was discovered that she had been receiving SSI benefits intended for a mentally incompetent woman who had been abandoned at the Alabama hospital emergency room in August 2010. The woman remained unidentified until August 2013. During this period, Thomas, acting as the woman's representative payee, continued to receive the woman's monthly SSI benefits. The indictment charged Thomas with misusing the benefits intended for the incapacitated individual. So imagine that. Just take a moment. They can't figure out who the person was that got dropped off at the hospital, but they're pretty much incapacitated. Can't figure out the name, can't figure out the identification. All they needed to really do is call that company that basically scans everybody's faces and like say, hey, any matches? Point is, the person who was the payee left that person there at the hospital, kept taking the money, and just not a good situation, not an okay situation. So indeed. Harry Bear, thank you for the $4.99 donation. I super appreciate it. It's that time of day. Thank you, good sir. I super appreciate it. That's awesome. Very cool. Very cool. All right. So with that said, now please remember everybody, and I super appreciate that, Harry Bear. That is awesome. And he's been a member for a very long time, which is awesome. Please remember everybody to hit the like button. If you don't hit the like button, then Walter becomes sad. Attorney Not become extra sad. All right, let's keep rocking and rolling. Discrepancies in the electronic representative payee system in 2024. An audit by the SSA OIG identified discrepancies in the electronic representative payee system, which is used to manage representative payees for SSI beneficiaries. The audit found in instances where payees were not properly established in the system, leading to potential misuse of benefits. These discrepancies highlight the importance of accurate record keeping and oversight in preventing SSA fraud. So in other words, a lot of times when the SSI, recipient was supposed to have a payee, what happened was, just to be clear, the computer missed it or didn't force it, or they weren't on top of it at the local field office, and one never got set up. And that is just absolutely crucial, because if they don't set one up and it doesn't go through, then OIG, when they do an audit, which they did in 2024, could potentially find it. Okay. Next one, overpayments assessed in fiscal years 2020 through 2023. Not saying which president was in then. As SSA OIG report for February 2025 analyzed overpayments assessed in fiscal years 2020 through 2023, the report found that 13% of SSI overpayments were attributed to a code defined as reason undetermined, indicating multiple factors causing the overpayment. Additionally, 9% of overpayments were due to unreported changes in beneficiaries leaving arrangements or receipt of in-kind support and maintenance. These findings underscore the complexities involved in administering SSI benefits and the challenges in detecting and preventing fraud. Office of the Inspector General caught on to it. Ironically, Trump's appointee was a little bit of the issue with that whole thing. Just as a heads up. Princess Diana, thank you for the $2 donation. I did get your text message. I haven't had a chance to respond. I have been working since 7:30 a.m. today and around 7:15 a.m. yesterday. Now, with this video, we just covered, okay, the following, which are the most likely crimes being committed by people. And I guarantee you, somebody who watches this video, I can damn near promise it with absolute perfection, crystal clear, perspective here, that somebody who watches this video will be on the gray area of at least one of these: aiding and abetting, bribery of a public official, conflict of interest, fraudulent claims, conspiring to defraud the United States, forgery, embezzlement, theft of government property, false statements or entries, fraud in connection with identification documents, fraud in connection with access devices, computer fraud, mail fraud, wire fraud, bank fraud, social security fraud, and supplemental security income fraud. In other words, what I'm saying is these are the criminal acts. These are the criminal acts that you will be seeing people be arrested for over the next couple of months. These are the particular things that the OIG CDI unit investigators are trained on, because many of them are part of their training. So please remember, at the end of the day, it is incredibly important that you understand that these are the highlighted crimes that they're going to be looking for. Okay. It's just, look, it's important. It's important. I'm just saying it's important. Okay. So with that said, I hit the button and I squeaked a little bit, but there it is. With that said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and catch you guys a little bit later. The next video, we're going to be covering whether or not, just to be fair, a little bit of music here. Let's get some music, a little bit of, there we go. Very good. We're going to be covering whether or not, essentially, to be fair, those who are able-bodied, receiving welfare, and there's a lot of them, should receive basically their food stamp money from taxes paid from retired and disabled people. To me, it is unethical to collect taxes from retired and disabled people to give it to able-bodied people. That to me is unethical. But with that said, to be fair, is what it is. We're going to look at that. You tell me what your thoughts are, and then we will go from there. Attorney Walter Hnot, I will catch you a little bit later. And please remember, with a lot of these, I need you to understand one final thought. When it comes to this stuff, if you see somebody filming you with a phone, if you see somebody taking a picture, if you see somebody basically out there with their iPhone going like this, you don't want to be in that. You do not want to be part of that. You do not want essentially them to go ahead and have access to essentially images or video of you, because there are people right now on disability benefits that just lost their disability benefits because somebody took a video of them, or they took a video of themselves and they put themselves on TikTok. Guys, if you're disabled, TikTok is real easy for the SSA OIG, real easy for them to use that evidence with DDEs and ALJs, with DDS and ALJs to basically create an ROI, a report that's used to deny you. Please, if you are on disability benefits, think twice before you become a TikToker. All right. I will catch you all a little bit later. Have an absolutely wonderful night. I do have another video coming up, and then I will be going live. Let me hop off this one. But please remember to like and subscribe if you need Medicare help. Go over here, free Medicare help, bottom line, 339-226-6287. They are brokers that help people get a tune-up on their Medicare plan. I will catch you all a little bit later. Let's get some crickets going on in here. Where's the cricket effect? Hold on. There we go. There's some crickets. And we will catch you all at the next video. Attorney Walter Hnot. Also, very important, crickets off. If, you need a private consultation with me, there's a 30-minute, 60-minute mini contract in the bio below. And of course, if you need a disability attorney, Attorney Walter Hnot, the most viewed, subscribed to, and clicked on disability attorney in America. I will catch you a little bit later, and we will rock and roll from there. Catch you in about 10 minutes. Thank you so much, Attorney Walter Hnot. We'll go from there. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.